Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Queer and Latinx. My name is Nata Choi, and I'm part of Latino Behavioral Health Services. And today we have Adrian, our special guest. Adrian, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a social service worker at a local nonprofit. I do LGBTQ immigrant rights activism. I do anti-police brutality activism. I was a union steward for a year. And yeah.
Dang, it sounds like you've been involved in a lot of things. One thing, Adrian, that I wanted to ask you before, like just to start it all off, um, this this kind of series is focused on the stories of queer and Latinx people and how these intersectionalities come together. So for you, Adrian, like let's start in the beginning. Like where were you born and how did you end up where you are today?
Okay, yeah. So I was born in Tulancingo Hidalgo. That's in Mexico. Um, My family moved here when I was 2 years old, mainly because of NAFTA and economic reasons. So we moved here to Salt Lake City, Utah. Um, yeah, so I grew up here. I spent the last like 20 years here. Yeah,
Okay. So you've been here pretty much all your life.
pretty much.
When did uh when did you feel like you were different? How did it start?
Ooh, that's a really good question. To be honest with you, I've always felt different. Like no matter what I did, it was always something. If it wasn't like being an immigrant, then being like noticeably neurodivergent, even though I didn't have a diagnosis at the time, people just thought I was weird. I have ADHD.
Mhm.
Um, well, yeah, and then figuring out that I was queer, I think was definitely a big one. Struggling with undiagnosed mental illness and just there's a lot there. So yeah, I guess I've always felt that way.
Mhm. When did you start exploring it?
Like my identity, my queer
Yeah,
identity.
yeah.
Yeah, so I want to say when I was 11 or 10, I noticed that I had crushes on people of the same sex, but also people of a different sex. And then just eventually around age 13, 14, realizing that things just felt all wrong for me and I was not being my true self and that I don't have to conform to any sort of binary.
Mhm. What how did your family react to that?
It was really hard at first. It was super hard. Um my parents just had a really tough time comprehending. And in a lot of ways they still don't understand, but they're trying.
Mhm. What
Yeah.
what was the process like when you came out to them, or did you come out to them?
So interesting story. At first, I was actually outed by my vice principal of my high school because I stood up for them racially discriminating against my partner at the time.
Wow. And so did your parents find out about that?
Yeah, they did, and they were they were not happy that I was portraying themselves as.
Sorry, you cut off a little over there. Could you say that again?
Yeah, sorry, my bad. So they were just really upset that I was putting myself out there in a way that they did not want their child to be portraying themselves as to other people.
Mhm. What do you mean by that? Like portraying yourself?
Just that I was openly queer and I was openly gender nonconforming, and I come from a family that is culturally Catholic, kind of on the conservative side. They just didn't want people knowing that their kid was queer, and they were really my mom well they were really worried that people were going to think they were bad parents, or they had somehow messed up because I was already so much trouble back then.
So back then you weren't just queer, but you knew that you had a voice and you used it.
Yeah, I would say that was around the time that I started exercising my voice.
That's amazing. And what brought you to that point? Like what gave you the confidence to do that?
That is a really good question. I think I just got tired of stuffing things down and pretending that I was okay with things that I was not okay with. I think that's really that's really what did it for me.
Hmm. Can you give me some examples of things that you kind of faced while you were in high school or school?
Yeah, let me think about that for a second. Well, just a lot of queer phobia, a lot of like getting like people complaining about which bathroom I used, or not wanting to call me by my name. People calling me a faggot, that's always been a thing. Just teachers asking questions and being like, well, we can't respect your identity without like a note from your parents.
Mm.
Yeah, I just got tired of it. There were a lot of things that about like the conventional like status quo in my life at the time that I was just not having. I was not happy with.
Mhm. That's really tough, especially as a kid when you think that you can trust your teachers, but just it's a different experience for someone that's non-binary. So for the people who don't know the meaning of non-binary and the pronouns of they them, could you explain that to us a little bit?
Yeah, so there's the traditional gender binary, which is the idea that everyone's either a man or a woman.
Mhm.
And then non-binary is everyone who does not fit neatly into the category of man or woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the pronouns they them?
They, them. Honestly, a lot of people default to that without thinking about it when they don't know the person's gender. It's just like saying he or she, except for you're saying they and them, and it's pretty much the same exact way that you would say it in the plural sense. The only real difference is that instead of themselves, you say themselves.
Mhm.
Other
Oh,
than that, it's pretty much the same.
that is interesting. I didn't know about that. Um, but yeah, non-binary is not, I guess, a common term that we use or that we hear a lot. Even in the name LGBTQ, there's no N for non-binary, and so it's interesting to kind of explore that a little. For you, what's been like the hardest thing about um, identifying as non-binary?
Um, can I swear on this interview?
I maybe just use substitute words.
Okay. Well, it was just a total like mind.
F.
Yeah, pretty much like mind F. Like that's really been the hardest thing for me is the ways in which your brain not matching your body will just drive you insane. And that's not every single non-binary person's experience, but that is my personal experience. I have really, really intense gender dysphoria.
Mhm. And what is that?
Yeah, so gender dysphoria, what that means is that you experience like significant amounts of distress from things related to the gender that you are perceived as. And so for me, it would be like things that constantly, remind me that people see me as my assigned gender.
Mhm. And so that kind of causes a little distress in 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 your life.
Yeah, very much so.
So, Adrian, for you, what does it mean for people to respect your pronouns and your identity?
Um, to just try to just respect and really look at the way that you see me or the other trans people in your life, non-binary people in your life. Really look hard at the way that you see them. Do you see them for who they are, or do you see them for all these things that, society told you that they are? That's that's really what it boils down to, because once you get that idea in your head, the rest of it comes pretty naturally. In fact, a lot of times what people struggle with is the discomfort.
Mhm.
It makes them uncomfortable.
What would you tell people that are uncomfortable with that?
Um, well, how do I put this? I mean, yes, of course you're going to be uncomfortable and it's okay. But just like anything else that takes you out of your comfort zone, it's trying to teach you something. You can learn from it. You have to work through that discomfort. Um, and honestly, like this is going to sound kind of harsh, but not everything is about you. Like I think that's the thing is like people get uncomfortable because they make it about them. It challenges how they think about themselves, how they see other people, who they're attracted to. It just, yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand that because if we make things personal all the time, it I guess it's not healthy in just like the simplest terms. Like it's not about you, so just respect people. Um, for you, Adrian, um, how has your culture as a Latinx person influenced your queerness?
Sorry, how has it what?
How has your culture as a Latinx person influenced you in your queerness?
Um, well, so I grew up in a very patriarchal, very binary, very heteronormative, cisnormative culture. And the gender roles were like pretty rigid and specific. It has caused me to just really rebel against certain things. Like, I don't know, here's a dumb example. Like my hands always look like this. Like they always look all rough and stuff like that, you know, cut up and whatnot.
Mhm.
I use my hands a lot, and that's like a very unfeminine thing, right? Is to like have your hands all messed up, typically like the stereotype is feminine people like to have their nails done all nice, and that's one of those things where I'm just like rebelling against what I was taught. Or just like I swear a lot. Like I don't know. I'll just do things that are unladylike because I got shamed a lot for being unladylike. And you know what? Of course I'm gonna be unladylike. I'm not a lady.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.